Everyone. Welcome to another Quran study. God willing, today we'll be reading from Surah 138, Surah 3, verse 138. Let's all seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. This is a proclamation for the people and a guidance and enlightenment for the righteous. You shall not waver, nor shall you grieve, for you are the ultimate victors if you are believers. Excuse me. If you suffer hardship, the enemy also suffers the same hardship. We alternate the days of victory and defeat among the people. God thus distinguishes the true believers and blesses some of you with martyrdom. God dislikes injustice. God thus toughens those who believe and humiliates the disbelievers. So, God tells us that this is a proclamation for the people and guidance and enlightenment for the righteous. This Quran is guidance and enlightenment for the righteous, and the news that we see in the Quran that is a proclamation for all the people, because on the Day of Judgment, no excuse will be accepted from them, especially because God has also given us the book, given us the guidance, given us the message, and has given us the proof to guide us and to enlighten us. And, the following verses, we are being reminded to strive in the cause of God and to struggle, against injustice. And God says that if you suffer any hardship, the enemy also suffers the same hardship, right? But the thing is that the difference is that God allows this as a way to humiliate the disbelievers and makes it a means to toughen the believers, because this is how our claims are tested. This is how our faith is strengthened when we go through, these, challenges in life. And we face them and we trust in God, and God supports us with His victory. Eventually, it toughens us, right? And God says that, He alternates the days of victory and defeat among the people. This is how He does it, to distinguish the believers, and also He blesses some of them with martyrdom. So many people die as martyrs because they choose God and they end up sacrificing their life in the cause of God. At the same time, many disbelievers are annihilated because they're also dying in that period, right? But you have two different outcomes for the believers versus the disbelievers. So there's nothing for the believers to be afraid of. Obviously, for whatever challenges, whatever struggles they have to go through to fight against the injustice, and to fight against oppression and fight for self-defense, God makes that as a means for them to be toughened and also for them to earn a lot of credit. At the same time, the disbelievers are humiliated and annihilated as a result of that. Obviously, this goes without saying that, of course, all fighting in the Quran is only permitted in self-defense, and God does not like any aggression. And God says even when you're attacked and when you have to fight, you shall not aggress, just follow with an equivalent response. Verse number 142, our claims must be tested. Do you expect to enter paradise without God distinguishing those among you who strive, and without distinguishing those who are steadfast? You used to long for death before you had to face it. Now you have faced it right before your eyes. Muhammad was no more than a messenger like the messengers before him. Should he die or get killed, would you turn back on your heels? Anyone who turns back on his heels does not hurt God in the least. God rewards those who are appreciative. So, when we claim that we are submitters, and when we claim that we are going to follow God and we're going to worship God alone, our claims are being tested as we speak, right? And on top of that, by just bringing us in this world, but on top of that, when we claim that we're going to worship God under all circumstances, all of those claims have to be tested. When we say that we're going to unconditionally, follow God, and we're going to obey God, and we're going to worship Him, then we are put in those circumstances where our claims are put to the test to see whether we're just offering lip service, or we're actually, our actions follow what we say. And so, for people to enter paradise, right? God says, do they expect to just enter without being put to the test? Like, I mean, is paradise like some kind of a joke for people? Like people think that they'll just go to paradise for no reason, right? I mean, paradise is a big reward. And imagine in this world, for you to earn something so small, like buy a house or something like that. I mean, you have to work so hard for so many years, right? And you have to sacrifice so much of your time and money, and so much effort goes into that, right? But for people to think that they will just enter paradise like that, like it's just a joke, And for people who think like that, and that really actually shows that they're not actually believers. Because if they truly believed in paradise, and they knew that what an awesome abode it is for eternity, they would really work hard for it, and they would understand the value of it too. But they don't even believe that it's real, right? But they think, yeah, what's this, some place? Maybe, and if it exists, maybe, I'll end up going there. Maybe I'll be so smart. But no, actually, God will have to distinguish those among us who strive, and those who believe, and those who actually deserve to go there, right? It's not as simple as obviously all what the people have made it out to be, people put their lives on the line, literally, in order to worship God. And so these are the people that will attain the high ranks with God, and these are the people that God will reward manifold. And so then at the same time, there are other people who will claim that they will do everything for God, but when the time comes, then they run away. But God says that, for those people who used to long for death, I mean, they were put in the situations where they were faced with it, and this is what verse 143 is talking about. And then God says Muhammad was no more than a messenger like the messengers before him. So this is something that people should understand, that people should not make distinction amongst God's messengers. And God is saying he was no more than a messenger like the messengers before him. How people have elevated Muhammad to the top of the top, to the king of the kings, and all that stuff. God says he was no more than all the messengers that came before him. He was just a messenger. And God says that should he die or get killed, would you turn back on your heels? So, this is an argument that reminds me of when people talk about the messenger of the covenant, and they say, well, the messenger had to be obeyed while he was alive, and we could listen to him, and we could follow his words, and we could hear his audios and videos because he's alive and he can clarify and this and that. And now that he's dead, they say he's dead, so he's no longer a messenger and we don't have to follow him, right? But that's not the truth, because the message he has brought is there now, and it's perpetual, right? Every information that has come from the Quran, from him, is been published and recorded in all means possible, and God has allowed all of this stuff to be propagated in time where things are properly documented, and but you cannot say things like, well, a messenger is dead, so you don't have to follow him, and there's no logic behind such a thing. Like, a lot of people were following Muhammad for some other reasons besides the fact that he was sent by God as a messenger, because for some worldly benefit or some kind of position in the society that was available while he was alive for them, that is no longer available for them now that he's gone, and so they would turn back. Right? Many people turned away from the message when Muhammad, we know from history, when Muhammad was no longer in this world, people turned away from the message very quickly, and we see the same thing happening right now with God's messenger of the covenant. You know, people that were with the messenger of the covenant and supporting him once he was no longer in this world. I mean, they deviated, and many of them, like, literally turned on their heels when they changed their qibla, etc. Excuse me. So God says, time of death predetermined. No one dies by God's leave. No one dies except by God's leave at a predetermined time. Whoever seeks the vanities of this world, we give him therefrom, and whoever seeks the rewards of the hereafter, we bless him therein. We reward those who are appreciative. So everything is predetermined by God, and everybody's time of death is predetermined by God. And God says, whoever seeks the vanities of this world, you know, God gives them those vanities, and whoever seeks the hereafter, God gives them hereafter. We bless those who are appreciative. Obviously, people who just seek the worldly life and they just get the worldly life, obviously they get no share in the hereafter. Verse 146, many a prophet had godly people fight along with him, without ever wavering under pressure in the cause of God. Nor did they hesitate or become discouraged. God loves the steadfast. Their only utterance was, our Lord, forgive us our sins and our transgressions, and strengthen our foothold, and grant us victory over the disbelievers. Consequently, God granted them the rewards of this world and the better rewards of the hereafter. God loves the good doers. So God says that, you know, these people who were, you know, being referenced here as godly people, they were with the prophets, and they fought along with them, and they fought without ever wavering under pressure in the cause of God. You know, so when people are you know, fighting in the cause of God, they're obviously going to get a lot of pressure from the opposition, right? It's never an easy thing to fight in the cause of God. So, but these people, they showed their relentless support, unwavering support, their resilience and their steadfastness by not wavering under pressure and being very steadfast, which is what God wants us to be. You know, God wants us to be steadfast, and He wants us to not waver under pressure and surrender, in other words, right? So, or give up. So that is a quality of the believers, and so these people exhibited this quality, and God says their utterance was, our Lord, forgive us our sins and transgressions, strengthen our foothold, and grant us victory over the disbelievers. So these people, you know, I mean, you can see that while they were going through this process and they were doing these things, you know, they were not, what I see here is that, you know, they were very humble, right? Because they're fighting in the cause of God, and they're going through all these scenarios and getting a lot of pressure, getting a lot of insult and attacks of all kinds. Obviously, you know, and their life is in danger, and they don't worry about that because they trust in God. And as they're going through all of this stuff, you know, many people can get really arrogant, could get really arrogant, you know, and think, oh, well, like, I'm so righteous, look at me, I'm doing this in the cause of God, I'm so great. And you know, the forgiveness, asking God for forgiveness would be the last thing on their mind at that time. There are people like that. But these people are genuinely, seeking God's redemption. They're in this not for a show off, not to show how amazing they are and for people to praise them, but really they are worried about their hereafter, and that's why they're praying to God and asking Him for forgiveness, so God can redeem them. And at the same time, they're asking God for His help. They're asking God for His support, because they understand that whatever they're doing, it's not anything from them. Like they're so powerful and they're so brave that they're gonna go and just get the enemy, defeated. They believe that God is the only one who's doing everything, and only God can grant them victory, and they're asking God for victory, and they're asking God to forgive their sins, right? And so this is the mindset that we have to be in as believers. And God says, when we have situations like that, we're supposed to glorify God and meditate on Him as much as possible, so that we can get God's support and we can get the strength, that we need in order to be successful. And we have to ask God for these things. So God says, consequently, God granted them the rewards of this world and the better rewards of the hereafter. God loves the good doers. So when you're going after the worldly life, obviously you're going to get the worldly life, but you're not going to get the rewards of the hereafter. But when you're going for the hereafter, you'll get the whatever you need in this worldly life anyways. God will make it so that you get everything you need. And this is what happens for these people also. God gives them the rewards of this world as well as the better rewards of the hereafter. So this is very important for people to remember, that obviously God is not going to neglect your worldly needs if you choose Him as your Lord and Master, and if you prioritize your hereafter before this world. I mean, when people have to rationalize their want and thirst for this world, I mean, they say that because they still have these worldly needs and they can't ignore them, and that's why they would rather put their worldly needs first. But the thing is, God says, no, you put God first, you put the hereafter first, and the worldly things are going to come to you anyways, because God controls them. It doesn't mean that you don't have to work towards your worldly goals as well. I mean, you still have to work, right? But the thing is, what is your priority? Do you prioritize work over God, or is it the other way around? Do you schedule God around your work, or you work around God? So these people obviously, prioritize their hereafter. They didn't care about their business. They didn't care about anything else, and they put God first. And this is why God says He rewarded them. 149 says, O you who believe, if you obey those who disbelieve, they will turn you back on your heels. Then you end up losers. God alone is your Lord and Master, and He's the best supporter. So if you obey those who disbelieve, they will turn you back on their heels, right? Because they are disbelievers and they want you to disbelieve. And so you start listening to them and following what they're following. Yeah, of course, you are going to be misguided and you're going to end up with them. God alone is your Lord and Master, and He's the best supporter. God controls your enemies. We will throw terror into the hearts of those who disbelieved, since they set up beside God powerless idols. Their destiny is hell. What a miserable abode for the transgressors. So we see that God controls all our enemies as well, and so He even controls what they feel. He controls their dreams. He controls their thoughts when they're alive, what they're thinking, what their perceptions are. So He controls everything, right? So when you put your full trust in God, He'll make sure that He will make you victorious, and He'll put terror in their hearts. Having the fear from the believers in the hearts of the disbelievers, obviously is support from God, because there's nothing you can do to put fear in someone's heart if they're not afraid, but only God can do that, if He wants to, because He controls everything. I mean, He controls their thoughts, and that's who God is. The Battle of Uhud, 152. God has fulfilled His promise to you, and you defeated them by His leave. But then you wavered, disputed among yourselves, and disobeyed after He had shown you the victory you had longed for. But then some of you became distracted by the spoils of this world, while others were rightly concerned with the hereafter. He then diverted you from them to test you. He has pardoned you. God showers the believers with His grace. Recall that you rushed after the spoils, paying no attention to anyone, even when the messenger was calling from behind you. Consequently, He substituted one misery for another, that you may not grieve over anything you had missed, or agonize over any hardship you had suffered. God is cognizant of everything you do. So these verses, as we can see in the subtitle, talks about the Battle of Uhud that took place during the time of Muhammad. And God says He fulfilled His promise to you, and you defeated them by His leave. But then some of the people actually became, distracted by the spoils of this world, and they, started rushing towards the spoil without paying attention to the messenger, without paying attention to what he was saying. And then because of that, He substituted one misery for another, right? And because God says that you may not grieve over anything you had missed, or agonize over any hardship you had suffered, right? So before you could agonize over one hardship, you got another one. And before you agonize over that one, you got one more. And but still, even God says that even after all this happened, God says He pardoned you, and He showers the believers with His grace. So even though they did all this, they also made a lot of mistakes, and God overlooked their mistakes, because He is appreciative also, and He understands that human beings are weak, and they're bound to make stupid decisions sometimes, despite having a messenger in their midst, and despite having the guidance. At such an important time, these people were disputing amongst themselves and disobeying the messenger, and doing all kinds of things that should not be expected of them. And with all of that, God still forgave them, right? So this shows to us how great, how generous and merciful and forgiving God is, because this really just sets a very poor example when someone's doing that, especially when the messenger is with them, and clearly they're disobeying Him and going after the spoils. So, but God is so kind and so merciful. He's beyond our imagination, how merciful and how kind He is. He has a system in place that we all know is set. Believers get rewarded for their good works, and the disbelievers choose to go to hell. But during all of that, what goes on for the life of a believer? They still commit so many sins, right? Their past life can have so many sins. God, on top of all of this, obviously God overlooks all of them, accepts their repentance, and still people will continue to make mistakes, and He still overlooks so many of them, right? But this is why it's so important that these people that were fighting, they were also asking God for forgiveness for their sins. So if they wouldn't be asking God, obviously, things would have been different, right? But they're also asking God for forgiveness, and they're asking God for strength. And so despite of all the mistakes they made, God still helped them. Moment of death predetermined, verse 154. After the setback, He sent down upon you peaceful slumber that pacified some of you. Others among you were selfishly concerned about themselves. They harbored thoughts about God that were not right, the same thoughts they had harbored during the days of ignorance. Thus they said, "Is anything up to us?" Say, "Everything is up to God." They concealed inside themselves what they did not reveal to you. They said, if it was up to us, none of us would have been killed in this battle. Say, had you stayed in your homes, those destined to be killed would have crawled into their deathbeds. God thus puts you to the test to bring out your true convictions and to test what is in your hearts. God is fully aware of the innermost thoughts. Surely, those among you who turned back the day the two armies clashed have been duped by the devil. This reflects some of the evil works they had committed. God has pardoned them. God is forgiver, clement. So, as the subtitle says, our moment of death is something that is predetermined by God. So, when people say that someone died so young and, if this happened and this happened, this person would not have died. Obviously, is a wrong utterance, because the time of death itself cannot be changed. So saying that if this didn't happen or that didn't happen, this person would be alive with us now, is just ignorance and not knowing that God has predetermined the time of death for every single person. So there's no such thing. I mean, there's nothing you could do to change the time of death. I mean, you could say, okay, he could have died some other way, but you can't say that. But even dying some other way, I mean, how does that even work? Because this person was supposed to die at this time, and he was supposed to die this particular way. It was already predetermined by God, and there was only one outcome for every individual in the way they're supposed to. It's not like they live in some kind of parallel universes and there's like multiple possibilities, right? There's only one outcome that God knows is going to be, and it's going to happen, and there's nothing you and I can do to change that. And God says, so these people, there were people that were tested with their true convictions, and they came out when they were faced with a situation where their comrades died, or they were not even comrades. They were even probably even people that were not even participating, but they saw other people, like their friends and relatives, die, and they said that had they stayed in their homes, they said, if it was up to us, none of us would have been killed in this battle, right? So they said that if it was up to them, none of us would have been killed, because they felt they were forced into the battle, and if they were the ones calling the shots, that they would all be alive. But God says, no, I mean, if it was time for their death, they would have crawled into their deathbeds, I mean, picture crawling into your deathbed, right? I mean, it's time for your death, and you just wake up and you just go and just walk into your grave, right? I mean, that's because that is supposed to happen. So if nothing else is going to happen, you're just going to go and put yourself in there, right? But the thing is, you can't change. So the thing is, you can't change that. You can't change the time of somebody's death. So you can't say if they did this or did that, this would not happen. No, it was already time. They had to go, and that's that. And God says, everything is up to God. When these people obviously were objecting at the time to what was going on, and objecting to the fact that God put themselves in a position where their claims were supposed to be tested, right? And now, so these people, many of these people would also fail the test, right? Many people were forgiven by God here, that God says that there are people who turned back the day two armies clashed, have been duped by the devil, So these people rushed for the spoils, and it reflects some of the evil works that they committed, God says. But God still pardoned them, and God is forgiver, clement. O you who believe, do not be like those who disbelieved and said of their kinsmen who traveled or mobilized for war, have they stayed with us? they would have not they would not have died or gotten killed. God renders this a source of grief in their hearts. God controls life and death. God is seer of everything you do. Whether you get killed or die in the cause of God, the forgiveness from God and mercy are far better than anything they hoard. Whether you die or get killed, you'll be summoned before God. Okay. So, God is telling us here that this is a sign of disbelief, right? Because it says, those who do not be like those who disbelieved and said of their kinsmen who traveled or mobilized for war, had they stayed with us, they would not have been killed, or they would not have died, because God is the one who controls life and death. And when you have these ideas, obviously, you will grieve, you will have this as like a remorse, but when you understand that, no, this was something that could not have been avoided by any means, then you understand and you accept it, right? Then okay, well, it was a done deal. But a lot of people, will grieve for people that pass away, and in the sense that they think that, okay, well, if this thing didn't happen or that thing didn't happen, this person would have been with us alive. And this is exactly what these people are tested with. And think about the fact that these people that we're talking about here specifically, these were the people who died in the cause of God. And so if these people really believed in God, and they were good believers, they would be happy for these people rather than sad and remorseful. It says God renders this a source of grief for them. So the disbelievers will be people who will grieve, but for the believers, there's no reason to grieve. I mean, they understand that this is a fact of life and death. God creates life, God creates death. Everybody's time comes to an end, and especially these people, they fought in the cause of God. God willing, God will forgive them and redeem them. And what is it? Dying. What is that like, really? I mean, it's like going for a vacation. If you found out that your loved one is going for a vacation to Hawaii, I mean, let's say, right, as the messenger of the covenant puts it, I mean, are you gonna be sad? Are you gonna grieve about it? No, you're gonna be happy if you truly believe that. If you didn't believe it, maybe yes. But if you knew and you thought maybe the person went missing or something, or an animal ate them or whatnot, But if you understood that, somebody's just going for a vacation to Hawaii, why would you be sad for them? So this is exactly what it's like. I mean, this is just a transformation from this world into the next life, and you're still very much alive, more alive than the people in this world, and they're having fun and enjoying life. So there's no reason for you to grieve in the first place. God says, whether you get killed or die in the cause of God, the forgiveness from God and mercy are far better than anything they hoard, right? Now, anything they hoard, you can imagine, compared to all the wealth in this world, anything, even twice as much, right, is not comparable to the value of the rewards that people get in the hereafter. There's no comparison whatsoever. The messenger's kindness. It was a mercy from God that you became compassionate towards them. Had you been harsh and mean-hearted, they would have abandoned you. Therefore, you shall pardon them and ask forgiveness for them and consult them. Once you make a decision, carry out your plan and trust in God. God loves those who trust in Him. And the footnote actually reads for 3:159. It says, the currency of the USA is the only currency that carries the phrase, "In God we trust." It is a fact that the American dollar has been the strongest currency in the world, and the standard by which all other currencies are measured. And then the next verse says, of 160, if God supports you, none can defeat you, and if He abandons you, who else can support you? In God the believers shall trust. Praise be to God. So when you look at the dollar sign, this is exact dollar bill. I mean, this is exactly what it says. In God we trust. So the verses talk about the kindness of the messenger and how they were supposed to treat the other believers, right? I mean, of course, he's a messenger of God. He was a messenger of God, and so when these other people were around him, I mean, he was not arrogant and proud that he's a messenger and now he can just, pretend like he's the boss and just treat people with arrogance and be harsh to whomever he wants. He was very much the same as any other believer, and he considered himself amongst just like one of them, and he treated them with kindness, and he was compassionate towards them. He loved them, and so God says, had you been harsh and mean-hearted, they would have abandoned you. So obviously, this was a way that God also allowed them to be together, because if he was harsh and mean-hearted, then why would these people be with him? These people are probably disbelieved and left. So God says to the messenger, says, therefore you shall pardon them and ask forgiveness for them and consult them. So when you consult them, you let them know that their opinions also matter, and you include them in the decision-making process, and you ask forgiveness for them too, right? So you ask forgiveness for each other, ask forgiveness, and consult them. And then God says, once you make a decision, carry out your plan and trust in God. So this also shows to us that the importance of planning. So when you do something, first you consult. You talk about something, you want to do something, you talk about it, you plan it. After consultation, you make a plan, right? And then you trust in God and you carry out your plan. It's not just you want to do something, just go and do it. Don't consult and don't plan, but just say, well, God, I trust in God, everything's going to be fine. So there are people that will do that, right? When they're faced with some kind of thing, they just go into it without thinking, without consulting, without planning, and they think, well, God is going to take care of everything. Everything's going to be sorted out, and then they obviously regret, right? And they have problems. But God doesn't want that for the believers. God says their affairs are decided after due consultation amongst themselves. So while it is not a requirement for every matter to be discussed and everything to be consulted, there are matters that require or consultation, or if they don't require consultation, say other people's are involved. I mean, there could be matters that would help if you consult other people, right? When you consult someone, it makes them feel good too, because it lets them know that you value their opinions. Like if I want to do something and I go consult someone, they'll understand, okay, this person considers me worthy of asking for his opinion because he values what I think, or he thinks of me as a person who is intelligent or wise or experienced, right? So it's a sign of kind gesture, right? First of all. At the same time, you're obeying God by doing that, because God says the believers, their affairs are decided after due consultation amongst themselves. So once you do that, then you don't just jump, right? You plan it. You make a plan. You think about all the things in advance, and you put a plan together, right? Like the saying that says, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And so we shouldn't be like that. We should plan things, and then we should stick to the plan, and we should trust in God while we're doing that, right? There's no point in making a plan if you're going to just change it last minute, right? So you plan something, then you try to stick to the plan, and then you trust in God, right? So everything you do, you trust in God, but it doesn't mean that you just jump in like blindly, right into it and rush into it. You have to plan things, you have to consult, and you have to do things that way. Obviously, from any angle you look at it, I mean, this is a foolproof way of doing things, and you have more chances of being successful by doing that. Also remembering that obviously following God's recommendation, right? There's a lot of wisdom in the Quran, and God has put these things in the Quran for our own benefit. So it's in our best interest that we follow that. And God says He loves those who trust in Him. So a lot of times when you make your plans, obviously a plan is not going to be successful if God's support is not with you, right? So you can make the best plans, but it's up to God to make the plan work. And the plan will only work if God will. So you have to put your trust in God. So you have to do all the things that God wants you to do, and then you put your trust in God, right? And the verse, mashallah, this is a beautiful verse, 160. If God supports you, none can defeat you. And if He abandons you, who else can support you? In God the believers shall trust. Right? And I mean, this is the essence of worshiping God alone. Why we worship God alone and we trust in Him alone? Because He's the only one who can help us. Right? If someone doesn't believe that, they're not even submitters. Right? Because if you think anyone other than God can help you or benefit you or harm you in any way, you're idolizing them, right? And so, yeah, who else can support you? Nobody. Who can hurt you if God supports you? Nobody. And that's why God says the believers shall trust in God. No one above the law. Even the prophet cannot take more of the spoils of the war than he is entitled to. Anyone who takes more than his rightful share will have to account for it on the day of resurrection. That is when each soul is paid for whatever it earned without the least injustice. So, no one above the law. So we see that the messenger of God, the prophet of God in this case, referring to, cannot take more than the spoils given than the other believers, right? So that shows that even for a prophet of God, I mean, he is entitled for not more than anything that any other person is going to get. Even though he's the prophet, he's a leader in this battle, right? Still, so he cannot get more than that. So this shows us equality of the believers, right? And God says anyone who takes more than that, obviously will have to account for it, right? And it's not righteous for them to get more than their share, because obviously they're taking someone else's share when they're doing that, then, because God wanted them to have this equal amount of share. And God says anyone who takes more than his rightful share will have to account for it on the day of resurrection. So people who don't believe in the day of resurrection will not care about this, and they will get whatever they can get their hands on. And this is what normally happens in these types of scenarios. People go and they take over and get whatever they can get their hands on. It's a lot of chaos, and people take advantage of that. But for the believers, obviously not the case. And God says on the day of resurrection, each soul is paid for whatever it earned without the least injustice. So we have to be extremely careful and equitable in that. And again, trust in God, because God is the only one who can benefit us or hurt us in any way based on what we do. And so putting our trust in God should be the thing that we should remember at all times. Every day we should remember that we have to put our trust in God. All outcomes are decided by God. And He's the only one who can help us, and He's the only one who can grant us victory. So with that, God willing, I'll end. If you guys have any comments or questions, please feel free. Thank you.
MashaAllah. Thanks, Daddy.
Thank you.
MashaAllah.
MashaAllah, brother.
So I wanted to talk about the steadfastness, and we saw a couple of places in these verses where God talks about a steadfastness. And what it really means is that no matter what situation and no matter what circumstances we are in, we have to put our trust in God and we have to worship God alone. So there are some people that only worship God or think about God when some adversity falls on them or when they need something from God. That's when they submit to God and then they pray to God. And once God gives them what they're asking for, they forget. We have examples where Messenger says when people get sick, they pray to God, and once God cures them, they find their saints, etc. So the believers are the ones that no matter what happens to them, they understand that it is from God, they submit to it, and they continue worshiping God alone. And this is very important because in many places in the Quran, God says like God loves the steadfast, or there are tests in order to identify those that are steadfast. And really, what it means is that it's just like I said, no matter what circumstances are, no matter what situation we are in, we always have to think about God. We have to worship God, and He has to be our God. And that is the trait of the believers, inshallah.
So, anybody else has any comments or questions? Are you guys able to hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. And these verses talk about the two very major wars at the time of Prophet Badr and Uhud, and these were like really big tests for the early believers. We had believers immigrating with the Prophet from Mecca to Medina, and then we had all these powerful enemies attacking them. And we've got different verses and different chapters within the Quran that God talks about these wars and fights, and He really tells the believers, put your trust in God, submit to God. When God declares war, join the Prophet and fight in the cause of God, and He will support you. We have, I think it's chapter 8, chapter 9, where God talks about supporting the Prophet with angels throughout the Battle of Badr and also the Battle of Uhud. And amongst the believers in different wars, we see that there are some hypocrites, there are some disbelievers, that instead of submitting to God and following God and his messenger, and they care more about their worldly materials. And because of the spoils of war, they disobey the prophet, or if someone if their friends or their kingsmen get killed, they blame others for that, and they say like if they hadn't gone with you, they wouldn't have died, etc. Like in all of these situations, you see what God explain things to them and condemns them, and he mentions that put your trust in God, and if you're supposed to die, it doesn't matter where you are, even if you're in your bed, death will come to you. And then he says, like, however, if you follow God and his messenger, the reward is just the reward of the hereafter is far better for you. You only know. And really, this is strengthening the heart of the believers. Even those people that didn't follow God and the messenger, or their heart rendered with disbelief at some time. God says he's forgiver, he's merciful. These people that just joined this new religion. Well, when I say this new religion, I mean this pure religion that had come to them. And it's really like mercy from God, where he explains things to them. He, tells them what the situation is. He tells them that he will support them. And then if they diverted, God tells them that he would forgive them. He's forgiver. He's merciful. Not the disbelievers, but the believers that at times probably they were not as steadfast as they should have been. And then that this Battle of Uhud is, and when you read about the history, they first were about to win, but then some of the people that were supporting Prophet around one of the hills, I think, they just think that the battle is won, and then they leave their posts to for the spoils of war, and then the enemy general attacks them from that area. And they just they become victor in the battle. And one of the uncles of the prophet, I think it was Hamza, was in this battle, and this is the battle where he got martyred. And when you go to when you go to Medina, they'll take you there, and then they show you the Uhud, where the Battle of Uhud took place, and you see that there are hills, and they tell you all about the history, and then there's a burial place for the martyrs of the battle, where they have actually buried all the people that were killed in that battle. I mean, it's really amazing when you think about it at that time. It takes a lot of belief and steadfastness to just literally leave everything that you've got in this life and submit to God and go to war with all these powerful people, where they really outnumbered them in many different situations. And that's why when God talks about the elite of the elite, there's many from the first generations, because the amount of the hardship of these tests and the amount of steadfastness and belief that it takes, I think it's just like it's a lot. You've got the prophet of God amongst you, and you've got the revelations coming to you at different times, and you really have to submit, and the belief must be really really, they must have really strong belief and a lot of steadfastness and trust in God, to literally just not think about anything worldly and submit. Yeah, mashallah.
Assalamu alaikum. I also wanted to mention, I'm not sure because I got here late, and I'm not sure if Brother Suleiman already mentioned this, but as we actually listen to the audio files, the Quran studies by the Messenger of the Covenant, we can literally, feel what actually meant by verse 159, that like a messenger is serious and at the same time is really kind and patient. And sometimes when you're listening to these audios, all these people challenging, posing irrational questions, and constantly, pointless discussions. Sometimes you could see how patient the messenger of covenant was, and he's just an example of all the messengers and prophets that preceded him. And this is a characteristic of the messengers, that it's a mercy from God, and we should be really grateful, because it is something that draws us to those audios. And also through that type of behavior, we are willing to listen and to actually focus and to get the information actually. So that's a very crucial part of being a messenger, is that you are patient and you have it's like beyond imagination how patient these messengers are, because when you compare them to yourself, you would see that like there's no way I could stand that type of behavior. But they are them. As the messenger, we can hear to the messenger of listen to the messenger of covenant, we can see how patient he was with people. MashaAllah.
Yeah, mashallah, God has chosen these people as messengers, and God knew that the qualities that they needed to possess in order to be messengers. And even though many people question why so and so was a messenger instead of them, for example, obviously God knows, He's the most wise, and we can see that when we see these different situations and how they respond. Also, we can see really how humble these people are, right? As messengers, when God makes someone a messenger, it does not go to their ego and inflate their egos as normally in this world when people get some sort of a privilege that they see as a privilege, immediately it gets to their heads, and they act according to how their ego makes them feel, and which is they're better than other people, and makes them arrogant and egotistical, right? But we see that they're just as they don't feel that they're any better than anyone else, you know, and they're asking God for forgiveness the same way, and treating other people the same way as they're being treated, and that's just a good quality for everybody to have, right? All the believers should possess these qualities. I mean, regardless of how God has blessed us in whatever ways. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we all need to be humble, and we owe it to God to be kind to each other, and remember that whatever it is that God has given to anybody, it's from God, and he can take it back if he wants to, and it's up to God to even accept our works or not. He knows our innermost thoughts and our intentions, and we have to not see ourselves in a position where we feel that we are already redeemed and everything, and forget about the importance of, for example, asking God for forgiveness and repenting to Him, and asking God for His help and His support all the time. John shared a verse. Says God's messenger of the covenant, verse 46:35. Therefore, be patient like the messengers before you who possess strength and resorted to patience. So, anyone else has any more comments?
Yes, salam alaikum, brother, sister. Yeah. So yeah, I want to talk about also the messenger something. I had a chance, I was in Middle East for a couple of years. So I have seen people from like Lebanon, Egypt. So when I see the
Can you guys hear him?
videos and audios and listen to
Yeah.
this, it's not like that I met in the.
Okay, sorry, we lost you for a second. Go ahead.
Are you listening now?
We can hear now, yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, when I was in Middle East for a couple of years, so I met, some kind in that like the people like from Lebanon, like Egypt, some.
Where in the
So
Middle East were you?
and sorry.
Which country?
Yeah. Oh, me.
Yeah.
Oh, I was in like Dubai, Dubai
Okay.
and Abu Dhabi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in there, there is so many people from different Arabic countries. Even Egypt. There's so many people live there from the Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
So so I have seen their the way they talk, their character or something. When they talk, they sometimes they speak so loudly. Sometimes they become crazy. It's, in all the nations they have some different kind of people. But when I see the way the messenger speak, and the way he's like the regular, very gentle and kind person. I was thinking he's an Egyptian or not. Like see, so you can see he is not like the ordinary Egyptian. It's something like I see his behave is something special. This my God knows, I see something. And the way also, he speak in English, is understandable for from the all over the world, So the way you speak, then even who born in USA or Canada or they also understand his English, and also for us also, we can understand his English. So God, choose a messenger. He'll speak in English, and it will be understandable from the all over the world. Sometimes when the people who born in here in USA or who born in like in UK, when they speak, sometimes for who born and raised in like the Asia, in like sometimes we don't understand all these things. It's hard for me. But the messenger, is this is another blessing from God. So that's I wanted to share with you my feelings. Yeah.
All right, so are there any, like, maybe any off-topic questions? I believe maybe there's not a lot of questions or comments about the verses we read.
Are you going any conferences? Because I heard from different side, so many people are joining different conferences, here and there. Is there anything you are going to join or any people? Or
Who are you asking? Me?
all of you, is there any plan? Are you planning to
Nobody, as
join any
far as I know.
conferences? Anything going on?
We, inshallah, will have our conference at some point when the time is right, God willing.
God
Definitely,
willing, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, inshallah.
Are you joining any conference, brother?
No, actually. When I became, first when I became a submitter, I was so, excited to go the Tucson, I'll visit the masjid, mosques, the messenger prayed, there. And, so I don't know why I'm not so feeling interest that much, because I see now the masjid is not belongs to the any Muslim the submitter community, and I think so. And there is there's so many thing going on from in the masjid Tucson,
Also,
so.
it's not the same Masjid Tucson that was there when the Messenger of the Covenant was alive. Like, it's literally not even the same building.
Uh,
So
no,
are they no
the
longer reciting their right shahada or anything in the religious duties? What happened to where the masjid
No.
ended up changing from being like righteous? Or did that happen?
So, no, I mean, of course, they didn't change their Shahada, but, they changed a lot of more subtle things, like using the Quran as a source of guidance and not listening to, the teachings of the Messenger, not upholding the Quran alone as their source of guidance. There's a lot of personal opinion and stuff, and they disregarded a lot of the stuff as personal opinion of the Messenger, and they brought in whatever worked for them, and including like other things that are not from Quran, like circumcision, for example, right? And when, for example, the Messenger of the Covenant has explained a lot of things, prohibited a lot of things that are unlawful, like, for example, insurance, and they don't care about that, and they don't care about when he talks about God's promise of perfect health, wealth, and happiness. They don't exactly believe the same way as him, because they said that they don't find these things in the Quran, and the Messenger told them to follow what is in the Quran, and so they use that as an excuse to not follow how he has explained, perfect happiness and all these things, and so a bunch of things, it's which has made them deviate in like several directions, and that's how they have like sort of propagated the confusion forward into the rest of the world, because of the prominence of their position now. When people look at them and they think that these are the sort of the leaders or the vanguards of submission, and they look up to them, and then they promote these ideas that are also published on their websites and sent around the world in newsletters and stuff. So, it promotes a lot of un-Quranic ideas now. So it's not the same as what was there at the time of the Messenger of the Covenant. And then
Rather, they didn't change the Quran, did they?
You also have,
because the app I have on my phone, they didn't change that, did they?
They didn't change much, but they sort of started the process of going back towards previous editions. So they did make some changes, and then they tried to roll back changes, and all that kind of stuff. But they didn't change like anything to the point where the meaning would be significantly different. But it's outside of the Quran itself. Like, for example, the videos and the audios, there's information that he explains. Even in the Quran itself, like, things are explained, right? But they don't actually believe it, and they publish articles and give speeches that are contradictory to what is written in the Quran, by selectively, concealing, certain parts of the scripture and abusing other parts, as God says. So, unfortunately.
So basically, they're placing their opinions above us.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't really understand the logic of, like, if someone passes away or dies, you don't have to listen to that person anymore.
Mhm.
And it's like saying, I guess this would be a good example, but once Moses let people know, it's like, oh, we don't have to listen to him anymore. Anything he brought or taught us, it's ridiculous. I mean, what if you're in class and your teacher or your professor teaches you something, and the next day you find out he died, and then you're like, oh no, everything he was saying, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, because the class is over.
Right, yeah. I mean, like, what if they were born, or what if they were alive during his time? You would ask, oh, would you pay attention to it now if you were alive during his time? And if they would have, yeah, but I mean, that right there is not a determinant factor. I guess I don't think their logic makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Brother Suleiman, how are they open to everyone? Like every person from every background can enter their masjid and attend their Quran studies?
Yeah, I mean, everyone except me.
Yeah, I was gonna say that everyone except you.
Because the other, a while ago, I saw a woman and she was so disturbed, and she was constantly using four-letter words, and it was like there was no way she was a submitter. And she said that I saw a video, like a random video on Facebook, and she said she used to attend those Quran studies. And I said, oh, what type of Quran studies are they that this person with this type of disturbed behavior, because she was truly disturbed. She was actually saying that in that masjid they are worshiping the messenger. They're saying Rashad said that, Rashad said this, and she was an American. So I was just so confused. What's going on there?
Well, that person was had PTSD. She was in the military, and so she had a relapse and stuff, and
Okay.
yeah. So, but
Well, I closed the video. I wasn't interested in following.
Yeah. She ended up moving there and getting married to another person who moved there, and then I don't know where. After that, things became really bad. So for her.
Okay.
But before that, she was almost normal. Yeah. But she was siding with them. But then when she fully sided with them and she moved there and stuff, then obviously she suffered tremendously. Yeah,
Okay.
so she's not in her right mind at this moment. Yeah.
Okay. But thank God, you could get in, you could get the message and still be confused And it's a blessing from God that, He guides our steps to the right place, and, He protects us. Praise be to God.
Yeah, one of my most, my most, I guess since we're on this question and people probably want to understand my perspective, is that, God promises the believers perfect health, wealth, and happiness, right? And He says that, if you're in God's kingdom, you're not going to get any problems whatsoever. You're not going to get cancer. You're not going to get AIDS or all these, things. You're not even going to get a headache. You're going to even forget what headaches are, right? And but these people have really doubled down on this idea that no, the believers will have the same quality of life as the disbelievers. The only difference is that the believers they submit and the disbelievers they object, which we know is not what the messenger of the covenant has preached us. He says, you have perfect health, wealth, happiness, you have no misery, no problem, no traffic tickets, no headaches. And so, like, they had published this newsletter that came to my attention after their leader died, So, and before he died, like, he was posting similar things against the message. And so, like, I made a point of it for people to understand that this should be a wake up call for people who are saying these types of things. And as I was researching on their articles written by this person, some other articles popped up, including one where they were like blatantly like saying things to oppose it. Now they have kind of toned down uh, the articles, the language, but you even still when you're reading those articles, like, you can tell exactly they're saying the same thing, but they're just not being as obvious. And so, like, they wrote these things, and then I ended up wanting to go. Well, I ended up just for work purposes. I ended up going to Arizona, and so I was like, okay, maybe I can go and maybe have a discussion or some kind of dialogue that God willing we can resolve issues and whatnot. And when I went there, like, they purposely got into this discussion about these things about perfect happiness and health, wealth, and happiness, and so totally contradicting like everything that we have learned from the messenger and from the Quran. And you have these people that are like in misery, people on wheelchairs and disability and depressed and all this stuff, and people with issues. So um, so there are all these people sitting there, and when they're saying all these things, and they're saying like all these disasters or blessings and all this stuff, I literally just I had the transcript of one of the videos, the King of Chaos, and I just, without saying a word from my own self, like, I just literally just verbatim was just reading what the messenger was saying in the transcript, and just that was like the first time when it became really clear to me that the entire masjid, there was like, I think like maybe 20 or so people that were present at that Quran study, which is pretty much a big outcome, for knowing their group and how big it is. So it's like 20 or so people, and they were all collectively just together attacking me like with verses after verses. It's like they had already planned it, and they were against it. They were like, and when I read this thing from the messenger, they were like, no, he never preached that. He says we were with him. He only preached from the Quran alone, and they were looking at me like I was talking in a different language, you know. So it was
The
very
language of happiness that they couldn't get,
yeah. So
I
exactly,
guess.
and this was really initially the thing that kind of set them off, because on submission.ws I had published an article where I had sort of issued written an
You
article
said a lot of their people
as a rebuttal.
are there people with disabilities and wheelchairs?
Yeah.
Or what type of people? Because I just wondering, like how people tend to acquiesce to the people's wishes. So maybe people might have a hard time believing that, but it's easier for them to believe that their disasters or chaos, is some type of is okay or a blessing. So maybe that's one of the reasons why.
Yeah, of course. And of course, I mean, you
Maybe
know,
the
for
only one I
you,
can think of right now.
exactly. And
Why
you know,
would
for
not
exactly, and
literally go with what's in the Quran and what the messenger taught?
yeah, and you know, the thing is that, you know, we're reading today about trusting in God. So you will not attain God's promised victory, or you will not attain the happiness in your life if you don't believe it exists. You know, for you to attain that happiness, or enjoy God's kingdom, you have to first believe in God's kingdom. You have to believe that, you know, God can give you a life free of misery if you pass your admissions test. So basically, they don't believe in admissions test, even though it's written so clearly in the Quran, in the footnotes, as explained so well. They think that no, there's no such thing
I
as
think
admissions test, and they believe that you will just continue to be tested even after the admissions
Brother
test is
Suleman
over.
cut off, right? Yeah, I didn't hear anything.
Can you hear me now? No? How about now? Oh, can you guys hear me? Oh. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I think I kicked my it was my microphone, I think. So yeah, so I think I was saying that they don't believe in anything like admissions test. So when I tell them that, you know, you're gonna have your admissions test, and after you pass your admissions test, these things will be over, and they don't understand. They don't understand that they think there's no such thing as admissions test, and they think that after you die, that bad things will continue to happen, and you just have to submit through that, right? So that's like, you know, totally to me, like, it's a really blasphemous thing. And they said, like, you can even lose your whole body as a garment, if it's a blessing from God that brings you close to God, you know. So literally, like, thinking that, you know, you can get all kinds of disasters, and you'll continue to suffer from disasters in this world even after, you know, throughout your life you show that you have worshiped God in all circumstances, that you'll continue to be like them, and there's no difference between your life and their life, and you will just submit through things, so you'll be relatively happier, you know. So that's like a watered down version of submission that we know from the Messenger of the Covenant, when he says there's no suffering whatsoever, you'll not even get headaches, you'll forget what headaches are, right? And these people are literally like dying of cancer, in pain and everything, and just going through all kinds of disasters, and then saying that, you know, they're this totally acceptable to be in that state for a believer, and, you know, that they're not missing anything. So I mean, that was one of them, right? And then the other thing is, even, I don't know which one is worse. I mean, obviously there's circumcision also that came to my attention afterwards, but then there's which is equally as bad, right? And then, but then there's also the other problem was that they're you know, telling other people that they don't have the right to propagate, you know, the message, like the Qurans, and the Quran should not be free, and everything has to go through them, and everyone else should not be allowed to you know, publish Qurans on apps or on websites or anything for free. And they have their son, Rashad's son, in that mosque, who's giving sermons, leading the prayers even, despite the fact that he claims to be a messenger, you know, and he keeps it very sort of secretive and selective. He tells people he's afraid to proclaim it out loud, and everybody knows about it, you know, but still they pretend that it's not happening, and they allow him to give sermons and all of this stuff, and at the same time they use him because you know, he is his son, and he has the right to have this material. and so it's just, and because of that was one of the other reasons why they have specifically have issues with me more than the other things, because of the apps and things that I refuse to remove them.
Okay. Oh, I understand. Yes, brother. Yeah, I also, yes, so I think it's better to clarify, it's better to have this, yes, because there is some rumor also, because when I joined the Quran study, and I heard something and I couldn't, like, I don't know how come. And this, like that, I heard that, yeah, you are the one, like, I just, publishing the Quran and taking the money, selling the Quran, and you took some. So you took some the videos or audios that from the and you didn't return it, something like that. I said, we have all these things. It's very clear the
Rumors.
message.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happened. This
Taken
what
audios and
is
not returned them.
yeah.
Like a library.
Yeah, I said hi. So you see, something. So people are, they are doing so many things, against you. I think I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, like that you steal something from there, the audio and video. I said, it is
So
so.
weird.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's happened in my eyes, from the Satan always has the traditional Muslim, all this nonsense and everything is this. He has started from that Medina, Makkah, all this deviation from the truth. So I think this is my, understanding. Maybe he's doing the same thing. He has started. He casts from, the road. Is God knows.
Yeah, I mean that's
Because
what,
he's
because that
he's doing the
makes,
same way.
yeah, because Satan wants to be effective, and he's looking for shortcuts to fool the masses, right? So he looks for people that that are considered influential, and people that he finds people and works on people that other people will look up to, right? In this case, people from Tucson, obviously. So he knows that, in order to change the religion and distort it. I mean, this he comes from the core, right? He tries to get the core to be destroyed, right? I mean, if you really want to destroy a tree or something, you get to its core, and the entire tree is gonna be destroyed, right? So.
Yeah, this is my understanding. Yeah, so he'll go only, to go in the roadside. Like the messenger of covenant. He explained. The Shaitan is going to the, like the, they call the madrasa. The Islamic university, the traditional. So he raised from there the people, and they are the one preaching his teaching. So maybe, yeah, he took the same step. I think.
Yeah.
So how do they use the proceeds of these the profits from these sales? Is it used in the cause of God? Because I don't know. I'm just because like when I'm looking at the perspective, the Muslim perspective that we've got. Some of them, you've got the price on top of the $19 or something like that. At that time, they used to sell it as well. But of course, it was a messenger of God, and the money was used, towards the righteous work.
Yeah, I mean,
Right?
I don't know exactly how they're using it, but the thing is, at least like what he's saying about what brother Nizam said earlier about me. I mean, I'm also spending more than I'm even getting, which I'm not even getting like anything substantial, that anybody can even like live on for a day. So I don't know how that would even work, but
No, I'm not talking about
yeah,
just on
yeah,
I know
yeah, yeah.
everything
But I
on your
mean, yeah,
website,
yeah. But I
etc.
mean,
is all free.
but I mean, from them, I mean, it really is irrelevant. I mean, how they're spending it. I guess that's not even like the question here. But the thing is, from the point of view of Sam Khalifa, obviously, I mean, what he's saying about the Qurans, that he's saying that Rashad said, which is a hadith, right? He's saying that Rashad said the Quran should not be given for free. He said my dad said the Quran should not be given for free, otherwise people will not appreciate it. So, and he says even if there was a Quran, which there is none, if there was a Quran that you could download from them,
To charge for it.
they would have to charge for it, a download fee. Literally, he said a download fee. I said, even
That's
if it doesn't cost you anything, he says, yeah, So it's like literally going against the Quran, because God says the messengers do not ask for a wage, and he says the wage comes from God. But he says, no, you have to ask for the wage, otherwise the person getting the message is not going to appreciate it. Yeah.
But we know that
Yeah.
that's not correct, because we've got the audios when Messenger said we've got copies here. He just gives the copies actually to the people that are coming to the mosque. So that's not true.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's I need to hear that too, God willing. That would be
Yeah, I
good.
mean, like there's this. The Messenger says, "Do you have the new copy? We've got copies here. Here you go."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he pretty much contradicts himself as well, since he called himself a messenger.
No, he says that if you want to strive, he says there's no need for you to build apps or build websites and put Qurans there. He says if you want to strive in the cause of, I said I want to strive in the cause of God. He says if you want to strive in the cause of God, just give me money. Literally, this is what he told me.
And that is exactly against different areas of the Quran. Regards to messengers are those that they do not ask for any wage.
Yes.
Follow those that
Yeah.
do not ask for any money from you.
And also he says that the messengers give proofs, right, of their messengership. So when you ask him that what is his proof of messengership, and he says that his proofs are in the heavens and the earth, and you just go and you look around.
It's such a pity that the messenger's son is.
This is wicked.
Unfortunately, I mean, I was listening to one of the audios, and Messenger was reading the verses around Moses and the fact that at the end only 2 or 3 people were submitting with him, and out of 120,000, the Messenger says, "Well, do not be alarmed, of course, but you have to be cautious, all these people that were sitting with Messenger at that time, God knows how many of them came out, remained bitter and steadfast. I mean, may God help us. I mean, Satan is just like literally sitting and waiting to hit every single person that, receives the messenger, receive the message. And it is very important that we steadfastly persevere and put our trust in God, inshallah. And one thing that is important is to kill our ego. And inshallah, if we learn to do that, kill our ego and submit to God, God will help and support us in this matter.
I had a question about Dr. Shah Khalifa and his taking. So like what I've read online, is that true? Like how he was taken from this world?
He was taken from where?
How Dr. Shah Khalifa was taken from this world is like what I've read online. Is that true?
What you read online? Like online, what did you read?
I read that he was assassinated.
You're asking if he was assassinated?
Are you talking about how his soul departed his body?
No, I'm asking, was his assassination, is that how he left this earth?
Yeah, he was martyred. Yeah.
And I think it took 19 years to find the guy. Is that right? I mean, I remember something reading.
Yeah, after 19 years, they were able to
Yeah.
extradite the actual killer. But it was just the killer who was, brought
Commissioned,
to
of
justice.
course.
Yeah, but not the actual group, the leaders who ordered the killing. I mean, he was just a hitman, But the actual group behind it was a big network, and the leaders, I mean, they were not brought to justice, right? But just the killer himself was was extradited from Canada.
So I've got a question. You know, you were talking about the fact that there were people with filters and stuff in Massachusetts. They've got the verse 48:17, and the subtitle for the 48:16 is the test for early generation. And then God goes on in 48:17 and says, the blind is not to be blamed, the crippled is not to be blamed, and the sick is not to be blamed. Those who obey God and his messenger, he will admit them into gardens with flowing streams. As for those who turn away, he will requite them and pay full retribution. Does that mean that it could be some early generations that become submitters, where they have all these conditions before they actually become submitters? And then God here is telling us that whoever
I think we lost you guys.
No, I think I can hear her.
Yeah,
She cut out.
yeah.
Soulmate,
Mona, I think
can you hear me?
we can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, so I just got disconnected for some reason.
Uh-huh.
So I was just saying, does that mean that it is possible that there are some people amongst the early generations of the submitters that had all this preconditioned situation when they joined submission? And then God informs us that as long as they believe in God and follow the messenger, and they will be admitted into gardens.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. I mean, because you know, if you are not, you know, in God's kingdom initially, right? So a lot of things can happen, right, during that time. But you know, if you wait, if you like, that's why the messenger of the covenant, he said in like he sent out some kind of a invitation letter to people saying that they could join God's kingdom and they could be protected. But you know, if they wait long enough, you know, they could be there could be things that could happen to them during that time that could be irreversible too. You know, they waited too long. So like, if you lost, you know, some part of your body or something, you know, before you became a submitter, I mean, you're not gonna grow it back.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes, so there could be some submitters
Yeah.
that are you know, not in perfect condition. But when they join submission, inshallah, God will make life much easier for
Easier
them.
for them. Yeah.
Yes.
And also, you know, in the traditional Muslim, also they believe, you know, so the more you suffer, the more God love you, you know. So and when you are suffering, when you have have disease, and God will remove your sin because you suffer. So it's the same, you know, concept, you know, what they are. You said, Brother Suleman. So they are going back to the whole concept. You know, the more you suffer, the more you have disease,
Exactly.
the more God love you, and God will remove your sin because of your suffering.
Yeah, exactly.
So yes,
It's the same. It's the same theme, you know. Like for example, God has given them given us the message, the purified message, and we still want to go to circumcision because this is what we learned and we can't let go. And the same way with these other ideas, they can't. They are preconditioned in their minds. They have these ideas and they're in love with them and they can't let it go. So they will want to still live. I mean, to me, this is such a big deal that God promises us these things. People all over the world. I mean, everybody's purpose in life is to pursue happiness, right? And we if we're bringing, if we're taking that out of submission, we're really, I mean, this is really kind of sad, because God has given us this great promise, and this should be something that obviously should bring more people to the message. Like, you want to attain happiness in this world and your peace and joy in your heart, and away from misery and problems of this world. This is God's path, is an invitation to us, and it's a big deal to me, for everybody, of course. That God, when we say happiness is submission to God, right? And this people say it on their slogans and everywhere, including my Tucson. So what it really means is, I mean, they've taken that out of it. Can you be happy with headaches and misery and financial problems and marital problems and all kinds of problems going on, and just say I'm happy and I'll just keep a smile on my face because God is doing everything? So that's not happiness, right? Happiness is when you don't have problems and you don't have these issues in life. I mean, you are able to enjoy a good quality of life. That's God's promise. I mean, we're reading today in these verses, God says He gave them the rewards of this world as well as the rewards of the hereafter. So, what are the rewards of this world? I mean, just submitting through misery. I mean, being miserable is one thing, but then just even having to submit through just misery for your whole, I mean, it makes sense to persevere and be patient during the time of misery, right? But then telling someone that you're going to be miserable your whole life, but you just have to stick it, you know, I think that's even worse, you know, to say no, yeah, you're going to be happy because you're just going to stick it. Yeah, that's not that's, I mean, that's just a joke. Yeah.
Yeah, from the messenger of covenant is very clear. I don't know. It's very clear that
Very clear. I mean, he
when you
repeats
become
it.
a like yeah
Yeah.
utmost submitter. So maybe before you become a utmost submitter, you have some issues. When you have certainty, you reach a level of certainty,
Certainty, yeah.
become a utmost submitter, then you have nothing. Yeah, this is my understanding from his teaching. So until now, yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, for someone to attain God's promise of happiness, you know, they have to first believe in it. And there's so many verses in the Quran that talk about happiness, and uh, God says in many verses that, for example, there is Surah 16, verse 97 says, Guaranteed happiness now and forever. Anyone who works righteousness, male or female, while believing, we will surely grant them a happy life in this world, and we will surely pay them their full recompense on the day of judgment for their righteous works. Um, and so there's so many other verses, including, so there's also like 1062 says, absolutely God's allies have nothing to fear, nor will they grieve. Subtitle says, happiness now and forever. And he says, most people think that they have to wait until the day of resurrection before they receive their rewards for righteousness or the retribution for the wickedness. But the Quran repeatedly assures the believers that they are guaranteed perfect happiness here in this world now and forever. At the end of their interim, they go directly to paradise, right? And they, as you said, with the messenger of the covenant himself, while talking about this, he proclaimed that secret to perfect happiness was one of his missions. And so when he talks about it, it is so clear, um, and so this, I mean, but when you read things, for example, in what Master Tucson said, so it said, like, therefore, a prolonged illness, even one that continues until death, or a permanent disability, does not indicate a state of disbelief. and it says it is not a condition of our bodies, but our state of happiness, which reflects the circumstances of our souls. Happiness, submission to God. So really, they just take out like everything and just makes it really confusing for people to, like saying happiness is not the condition of our bodies, but our state of happiness. But our state, it is not the condition of our bodies, but our state of happiness, which reflects the circumstances of our souls. It doesn't make any sense to me.
How
Right?
could you be happy if you
Messenger.
have a painful body? I mean, how could you be happy?
Yeah.
There's no way you could be happy.
Yeah.
Messenger said, happiness is submission or devotion to God alone, and he said it is a state of soul. And so he gives an example of Eddie Murphy, where he's got all the money and he says he's got everything in terms of like worldly life, but in his interview he said like he's not feeling happy, and that is because his soul is not grown enough to reach that state. So happiness is a state of soul. And as we just discussed, yes, I mean, there are some submitters that when they join submission, they may not have like the perfect, they might have been disabled, but that doesn't mean that they're not submitters. I read it that way, Solomon, that yes, there might be disabled, but that doesn't mean that if they submit to God alone and they follow God and messenger, they are still counted as disbelievers. They're not,
Yeah. So they
so
said.
there are those people that can be like that. That doesn't mean that the submitters will have to expect things like that. Inshallah, God will see into it and give them perfect health and wealth and happiness in terms of physically and
So
from the
so
state
then
of
they
the soul.
so then they also said that remember that our bodies are just shirts. This life is temporary and very short. So no matter what it looks like, no matter what it looks like, if something draws us closer to God, it is a great blessing. Losing a button off our shirt, or indeed, and now they're talking about the body, okay? They're saying losing a button off our shirt, like say losing a finger or losing a leg, or indeed having the whole shirt consumed by disease, is nothing if it gains us paradise. If a difficulty causes us to
Wow.
turn to
I mean,
God,
No, that is confusing.
that doesn't make sense
matter how
because
others-
you're not gonna lose anything permanently, like as a submitter. There's no way that doesn't happen. I'm a living example. I'm not gonna say like I was disabled, no, but I had serious issue, nervous issue. I had neck problem. I had like problems, really huge problems that I had to spend thousands of dollars of money to get some healing. And but I remember by the blessing of God, by the grace of God, that the first day I talked to Suleman, he actually mentioned what the messenger said, that you could get healed, and that was seeing it, hearing it from another person who has been in submission. First of all, you should focus on what God tells you in the Quran and also the messenger, but also being around the people that actually believe in that, that reassures your heart and makes you believe in that. And then that's when it might take time, but there's no way that you stay in that state of pain and then call yourself a submitter, because God heals you. God sends his angels to heal you, and that's all the things that we heard from the messenger of God and from the Quran. So this is actually logical fallacy. They're just them hurting themselves, and also the people who join them.
Yeah, I mean, if you see in the King of Chaos, mashallah, like it says, so, and this is what I read to them, right? It says, and Satan is being tested as a god, and the results are all around us. It says, now you know why the famine, the starvation, the misery, the accidents, the cancer. Satan's kingdom is plagued with these problems. On the other hand, it says these problems do not exist in God's kingdom. When you side with God's point of view, that is, decide that God alone is the Lord of the universes, without any other idols in your life, you belong in God's kingdom. And God's kingdom has no cancer, no accidents, no headache, and no problems. God's kingdom is characterized by perfect health, perfect wealth, and perfect peace, perfect happiness. I know this sounds unbelievable, but you heard me right. God's kingdom is characterized by perfect health, perfect wealth, perfect happiness, and joy. When you choose God's point of view, you belong in God's kingdom, and you will have no headache, no problems, and no traffic tickets. I'm going to repeat this. You heard me right. When you belong in God's kingdom, you will have no headache. You will forget what headaches are. You will have no financial problems, no health problems. God runs the universes,
Yeah,
and
it makes sense. You know,
that
if
is His
something
law.
bad happened, or a part of your body,
Hmm.
or something happened.
Yeah,
Makes sense, if it happened before, you came in submission or became a submitter. They're trying to say that stuff like that keeps happening, or whatever happened again after becoming a submitter. Yeah, that doesn't really make.
hmm yeah. So it says you'll have no. It says if you belong in God's kingdom, there'll be no headaches. No, sorry, there'll be no
Obviously,
accidents.
whatever happened to you prior was because of yourself.
Yeah,
Anything good or healing that you get after comes from God.
yeah. So inshallah, I will continue reading. You guys can still hear me, right? Oh, can you guys hear me? Oh, I was talking. I don't know what happened. Um, did you guys hear me read?
Uh,
No.
No, brother, no.
Oh my
I
God,
didn't hear.
I was
yeah,
reading. Okay, so it's saying, and Satan is being tested as a. This was from the King of Chaos. This is what I read. It says, and Satan is being tested as a god, and the results are all around us. Now you know why the famine, the starvation, the misery, the accidents, the cancer. Satan's kingdom is plagued with these problems. On the other hand, these problems do not exist in God's kingdom. When you side with God's point of view, that is, decide that God alone is the Lord of the universes, without any other idols in your life, you belong in God's kingdom. And God's kingdom has no cancer, no accidents, no headache, and no problems. God's kingdom is characterized by perfect health, perfect wealth, and perfect peace, perfect happiness. I know this sounds unbelievable, but you heard me right. God's kingdom is characterized by perfect health, perfect wealth, perfect happiness, and joy. When you choose God's point of view, you belong in God's kingdom, and you will have no headache, no problems, and no traffic tickets. I'm going to repeat that. You heard me right. When you belong in God's kingdom, you will have no headache. You will forget what headaches are. You will have no financial problems, no health problems. God runs the universes, and this is His law. If you belong in God's kingdom, there will be no accidents in your life, no misery, no marital problems, no problems of any kind. Unfortunately, the vast majority of people have sided with Satan's point of view that God alone is not enough. They do this by idolizing, setting up idols like Muhammad or Jesus or Mary or St. Francis or the boss or the dollar. They set up all kinds of idols, and when they do this, they uphold Satan's point of view, and automatically they become Satan's constituents. And then it goes on to say, any human being you look at belongs either in God's kingdom or Satan's kingdom, whether they know it or not. There is no other choice. You either belong in God's kingdom or in Satan's kingdom. How can you tell? If you have any problems whatsoever, if you have headaches, financial problems, health problems, marital problems, any kind of problems, this will be your hint that you have made the choice to side with Satan's kingdom somehow. You will have to examine your own life. That is the difference between Satan's kingdom and God's kingdom. God's kingdom is characterized by perfect health, perfect wealth, and peace of mind. If you look into your life and find that your life is full of problems or has some problems, if you come to the conclusion that you have been victimized by Satan or duped by Satan into joining his kingdom, what is the way out? How can you join God's kingdom? How can I join God's kingdom? This is a very easy matter. At the same time, it's not so easy for the reasons that I'm going to explain to you. First of all, you have to come to a solid, unshakable conclusion that God alone is the Lord of the universe, that no one besides God can help you or harm you. You have to come to this solid conclusion. So let us say that you claim that you have come to this conclusion, that you believe that God alone is the Lord of the universe. The scripture tells us in the Quran in chapter 29, verse 2 and 3, I'm going to quote it now. Do the people think that they will be left to say, we believe, without being put to the test? We have tested those before them, and for God must distinguish those who are truthful, and he must expose the liars. Therefore, when you make this claim that you believe that God alone is the Lord of the universe, you have to be put to the test to show that you're not just offering lip service, that this is a deep, unshakable, solid, unshakable conviction. We read in the Bible that Job was put to the test. Satan inflicted a lot of harm upon Job, and this is my chance to tell you that any problems, any diseases, any accidents, any misery is afflicted only by Satan. God does not inflict any harm on his creation. There are 4 kinds of disasters. The first kind is the admission test, which I call the admissions test. When you and I claim that we believe that God alone is the Lord of the universe without any idols, we must be put to the test. These admissions tests are designed to show us that we uphold this conviction solidly, unshakably, under all circumstances, rich or poor, health or sickness. And admission tests are characterized by the fact that they do not leave permanent damage. They test you thoroughly, then you are admitted into God's kingdom. This is the first kind of disaster. Yes, and so go on. So if you guys want to, watch the full video, you can Google "The King of Chaos" by Dr. Shah Khalifa.
MashaAllah, God bless you.
God bless you too. So I guess if there are no further comments or questions, inshallah, we can conclude the study. Thank you all for joining us. God willing, our next Quran study, English Quran study, would be on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. And God bless you all. Thank you for joining. Assalamu alaikum.
Salam
Salam
alaikum.
alaikum.